What is up, party people? It's KeysDAN with RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com, coming to you live and in living color from the Radio What studio. And this is my podcast, What Makes You Famous. It's an extension of the RadioWhat.com internet radio station that I've been running for quite some time. And if you need DJ services, where do you go? DJLittleRock.com. Check availability and get a free price quote. And maybe you could have me. Oh yeah, I like to play for the people at your next event. You know, I like weddings and parties of all kinds. Video dance party karaoke jams have been what's going on lately. If you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous.
Now, on with the show. Today on the program, it's a fun one. Why is blue raspberry a flavor? For those of you that aren't horticulturalists, there's no such thing as a blue raspberry in nature. Sort of. There are only red raspberries and black raspberries. Black raspberries could perhaps be described as purple, but certainly not blue. If nothing like a blue raspberry exists, why is it so prevalent in sports drinks, candy, and ice pops? I remember the late, great George Carlin had a whole bit about blue food. There's no blue food. Look it up. It's a lot of fun. Continuing on, there is too much red. Prior to the 1950s, many of the artificial flavors we know and love were colored red after their natural inspirations. Unfortunately, that led to a lot of confusion due to the abundance of red fruit. Cherries are red, watermelons are red, strawberries are red, and yes, raspberries are red. Why so many red-colored foods? The companies making treats had to create different shades for each product. Watermelon became almost pink. Strawberry was a lighter red. Cherry was a deep red. And raspberry was given a dark red wine color. Most of the colors still represent their respective flavors today. Raspberry, however, had to change because of the dye used to make the dark red coloring. Red dye number 2. What is red dye number 2? For years, red dye number 2, otherwise known as amaranth. Let me say that again. Amaranth was a popular red dye used in foods, drinks, and cosmetics, and was the primary ingredient in the food coloring used for raspberry-flavored treats. In 1971, Soviet scientists declared that red number 2 was a cancer-causing agent. Public outcry in the United States was so bad that it scared companies away from producing anything red. I remember that. Mars Candy stopped making red M&Ms, even though the company didn't use red number 2 as an ingredient. The Food and Drug Administration, FDA, officially banned red number 2 in 1976. In the studies, the FDA found that the chemical did cause cancer in lab rats in high doses, but it has never been shown to cause any harm to humans, especially in the small doses that come in food coloring. Despite the lack of evidence supporting either case, red number 2 remains illegal in the United States. Let's make the jump to blue. With the new research ban on red number 2, food companies had to come up with a new color for their raspberry-flavored products. Without another red color to fall back on, a company called Gold Medal, which still makes commercial snow cone machines, decided to go in a completely different direction. While there are tons of natural fruits that are red, there are hardly any that are blue. They decided to make their raspberry products blue and call them, quote, blue raspberry, end quote. The first official mention of blue raspberry snow cones in a periodical from 1958 called, quote, the Billboard Outdoor Amusement Directory, end quote. Hey, let's all get on the blue bandwagon. Gold Medal might have been the first, but it wasn't the only company looking for an alternate color for raspberry. In the early 1970s, about the same time that the Gold Medal was making their blue raspberry snow cones, Flavor Ice started making their very own blue raspberry popsicles in their signature plastic tubes. Everyone's favorite slushy company Icy started producing blue raspberry flavored beverages in the 1970s as well. Blue was already a part of the Icy brand color scheme, and the company wanted something that would contrast with their already popular red cherry flavor. Blue raspberry quickly rivaled their flagship cherry flavor in popularity and spread across the United States. As time went on, blue raspberry grew in popularity until it was the universally recognized flavor that it is today. Hey, is there any truth behind the flavor? Ultimately, no. The artificial raspberry flavor doesn't contain any raspberry. There is, however, a wild relative of the raspberry native to Western North America called Rubus cordamus, or white bark raspberry. In most cases, the berries ripen to a dark purple or black color. But interestingly, they can sometimes turn into a brilliant blue color. There is blue food. While it might be fun to know, there is actually a blue raspberry growing wild in the hills of California. Their flavor and color combination was never used to make raspberry flavored treats. It's purely a coincidence. That's a little bit about blue raspberry. Aren't you smarter now? Don't you feel smarter? This has been What Makes You Smarter. I'm KeysDAN. By the way, if you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. Stay tuned to What Makes You Smarter for more of this fascinating stuff. That's it for me. It's KeysDAN, RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com. Peace. I'm out of here.
If you like what you hear, I encourage you to follow What Makes You Smarter on social media. Find it on Facebook at What Makes You Smarter, Instagram at What Makes You Smarter, Twitter at SmarterWhat, and YouTube. Username KeysDAN. Leave What Makes You Smarter podcast a review and subscribe. Listen to What Makes You Smarter podcast on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and Podcast Addict. My personal favorite, learn with me on my podcast, What Makes You Smarter. And if you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. Call 501-470-6386 and leave a message to set up a time for What Makes You Famous. Support What Makes You Smarter podcast using the PayPal, paypal.me/KeysDAN. Email info@radiowhat.com. What Makes You Smarter is a production of KeysDAN Enterprises Incorporated at keysdan.com. Thank you for listening.